You've seen them shining under the studio lights, Orange County choppers, all chrome and attitude, the so-called kings of custom. But take one past the city limits, and that legend turns on you fast. Every bump, every vibration, every gas stop reminds you. This was never a road bike. The seat's brutal, the tank's tiny, and the suspension's just for show. And if you think this only happens to rich collectors, think again. Because the same hype that sold those bikes is still out there, just dressed in new paint and promises. Watch till the end, because what I'm about to show you could save you from making the same expensive mistake. The legend on the lift. There was a time when an Orange County chopper wasn't just a motorcycle. It was a badge of rebellion, a rolling trophy for anyone who wanted to say, "I made it." The TV lights hit that chrome, the pipes barked once, and millions of riders leaned closer to the screen. Those builds looked like the future, stretched, sculpted, perfect. They weren't just machines, they were statements. Each line shouted attitude, each weld carried ego. The world saw them on magazine covers and Discovery Channel marathons, sitting under spotlights while the two tolls argued, welded, and slammed tools in front of cameras. But under the gloss, something important was missing. These bikes were never tested where truth lives, in the miles between gas stations, under the weight of luggage, against wind that never stops pushing. The show made heroes out of artists, not engineers. They built icons, not travelers. The dream was speed, fame, and chrome reflection, not comfort, distance, or practicality. A generation of riders saw that art and thought it could ride like their Harleys or Goldwings. Some sold reliable tourers to chase a legend that only looked good standing still. And the moment those custom machines hit real asphalt, the myth started to crack. But the cracks don't show in the showroom. They show when you finally try to ride it like a motorcycle, not a monument. Art hurts. The first surprise comes before the engine even warms up. You throw a leg over, grab the bars, and realize this thing was never meant for a spine that's lived a few decades. The seat sits low and hard. The foot pegs are stretched forward so far, you feel like you're reaching for tomorrow. The bars twist your shoulders into a wide, proud stance that looks perfect in photos. But after 20 miles, it's punishment disguised as pride. Every bump on the road sends a message straight through the frame into your back teeth. On a smooth highway, you can fool yourself for maybe 30 minutes, but once the pavement changes, every ripple feels like a sledgehammer under your tailbone. Most of these bikes ride with almost no real suspension travel. A rigid rear or overextended fork might look fierce in the garage, but on interstate heat, it's a slow form of torture. You start shifting your weight, hunting for relief, but there's none. Even the mirrors shake like they're laughing at you. And the thing about pride is, it keeps you on that seat longer than you should stay. Because this isn't just pain. It's the kind of pain that feels personal. You bought a legend, but the legend's biting back. And if the pain doesn't stop you, the practicality will. The next problem isn't your back. It's everything your hands can't carry. If you appreciate real rider talk and the truth behind the shine, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Drop a comment and let me know what stories you think deserve to be told next. The storage that isn't there. A road trip demands a few simple things. A tank that lasts, space for gear, and a place to put the memories you collect along the way. On an Orange County chopper, you get none of that. The gas tank might hold barely enough for a short Sunday loop, often less than 3 gallons. At highway speed, you're hunting for a gas station every 50 to 60 miles. That's not freedom, that's a leash. Then there's storage, or rather, the lack of it. You might manage a wallet, a phone, and maybe a sandwich if you tape it down. Saddlebags? Forget it. There's no place to strap them without ruining the look. These bikes were designed for symmetry in showrooms, not sleeping bags and side luggage. And try doing a U-turn in traffic with that stretched rake and extended wheelbase. Every slow maneuver feels like a trust exercise in gravity. You realize fast that you're not on a motorcycle built to explore. You're on a sculpture that happens to move. The longer you ride, the more you feel like a passenger of its design choices. The bike dictates every stop, every stretch, every mile. The road becomes a reminder that you're carrying nothing. Not comfort, not gear, not range, just pride and pain. But the road has a cruel sense of humor. Because when the comfort runs out and the gas runs dry, that's when reliability decides to leave too. Check the description for the gear and accessories that make every mile easier. When the chrome turns to sweat, every rider has a story about a breakdown, but few have stories like the ones tied to these choppers. Engines that overheat after a few minutes of traffic. Belts that slip because alignment was sacrificed for looks. Electrical gremlins hidden behind custom housings that no ordinary mechanic can reach. You start to notice the irony. The very bikes built to turn heads end up sitting on trailers more often than they roll under their own power. There are reports from owners who couldn't make it 50 miles without an oil leak, or who melted wires after an hour in summer heat. And these weren't neglect. They were flaws baked into the blueprint. When you build for spectacle, you compromise the systems that make endurance possible: cooling, balance, and vibration control. Once the chrome starts to discolor, you see the truth behind the polish. The helplessness hits hardest when you're parked on the shoulder, sweat running down your neck, watching cars pass while your so-called masterpiece steams beside you. The phone call to the tow truck feels like defeat. You didn't just break down, you were betrayed by design. At that moment, something shifts. You understand that Orange County choppers were never built for the kind of freedom the open road demands. They were built for cameras, for collectors, for applause. But out here, under the sun and the wind, applause won't keep a bike running. The real road doesn't care about logos or television fame. It only cares about what survives mile after mile. And that realization, the difference between what looks free and what truly rides free, is where every honest rider's awakening begins. Geometry of regret. Every motorcycle lives or dies by its geometry. Rake, trail, and wheelbase. Those three numbers define how it rides, turns, and handles real roads. On an Orange County chopper, those numbers are stretched beyond reason. The long front forks, the extreme rake angles, and the extended wheelbases might look dramatic under showroom lights, but they throw every rule of stability into chaos. The further you stretch that fork, the more sluggish the steering becomes. You don't steer a chopper, you wrestle it. On a proper touring bike, like a Road King or a Goldwing, geometry is a science of balance. The rake sits around 26 degrees, and the trail keeps the front tire tracking straight without killing agility. The wheelbase stays manageable, long enough for comfort, short enough for control. But with an Orange County chopper, the rake often pushes past 40 degrees. The wheelbase can stretch over 9 feet. At that point, you're not riding a motorcycle, you're piloting a sculpture with wheels. It looks rebellious, but at highway speeds it feels unpredictable. Cornering feels like steering a freight train, heavy, unresponsive, and punishing. Built for symmetry, not control, every jolt shoots straight through the frame into the rider. The longer the ride, the clearer the truth. Beauty took precedence over balance, and comfort never stood a chance. And when the handling wears you down, the next battle begins. The war against the elements that no amount of polish can protect you from. Heat, vibration, and the wind war. Every rider knows that wind is both friend and enemy. On a real touring machine, fairings, windshields, and tuned aerodynamics cut through the air like a knife through cloth. On an Orange County chopper, the air hits you like a wall. Those stretched frames and open handlebars leave you exposed, bracing your core just to stay upright. After 20 minutes, your shoulders ache. After 40, your neck starts to fight the blast. You're not gliding. You're enduring. The air cooling system on these oversized engines adds another layer of suffering. Most OCC builds ran large S&S motors, 113, 124, or even 130 cubic inches of displacement, yet relied solely on air to shed the heat. That's fine for bar hopping or parade speeds, but hold 70 miles an hour under summer sun, and the engine turns into a furnace. Oil thins, temperatures spike, and the exhaust cooks your leg until it feels like it's touching an iron stove. Vibration turns every ride into punishment. No balance shafts, no comfort, just bolts backing out and hands gone numb. Gauges blur, mirrors shake, and fatigue wins. A true tourer disappears beneath you. A chopper like this never does. It shouts, rattles, and demands suffering. And if the physical pain isn't enough, the next blow comes from the wallet, because the ride doesn't just cost your comfort, it drains your savings. Bills on wheels. The truth about custom motorcycles is simple. Every mile costs more than it should. On an Orange County chopper, that cost multiplies because almost every part is one-off. Need a new clutch cable? Good luck. Most of them were hand-fitted. A replacement fender? Only if the builder still has the mold. Even something as simple as a brake lever can mean hours of hunting through forums or calling custom shops that no longer exist. Then there's tuning. Those big S&S engines demand precise jetting or mapping, but many were never properly dialed in. Builders built for deadlines, not durability. That means carburetors that run lean, ignitions that stutter, and idle issues that never go away. Every visit to a mechanic becomes a guessing game. Labor hours stack up because no two choppers are identical. One rider might spend $500 fixing a leak that costs another rider $2,000. There's no standard, no efficiency, just endless experimentation. Tire wear kills quietly. Massive rear rubber burns fast, and replacement means tearing the bike apart. Maintenance feels like disassembly disguised as care. These machines are art, but motionless art fades. The cost of keeping them alive soon outweighs the joy of riding them. And when you finally roll into a shop looking for help, you learn the harshest truth of all. Nobody's waiting to fix a legend built for TV. Abandoned at the counter. Walk into a dealership with an Orange County chopper and watch the expression change. The tech behind the counter looks at it like a spaceship landed in his service bay. There's no VIN that matches the database, no factory specs, no service manual. Try ordering parts and you'll hear the same line. We don't work on customs. Even independent shops hesitate because liability follows any mistake. The bike may carry a Harley-style engine, but the rest of it is a mystery no one wants to touch. That isolation hits hard. Riders who spent tens of thousands on their dream machine end up stranded between two worlds, too exotic for the local dealer, too unstable for the highway. The builder might have moved on or shut down. The custom parts came from suppliers that folded years ago. Every repair becomes a scavenger hunt. Forums are filled with desperate questions from owners begging for wiring diagrams, sprocket sizes, or brake line routing. Most threads end the same way: silence. Warranties were empty promises, insurance a maze of high premiums and paperwork. These bikes were built for spectacle, not support. Once purchased, you became your own mechanic and parts supplier. Ownership turning into isolation. Exclusivity revealing itself as the loneliest kind of prestige. And when you realize that, you start to see the bigger pattern forming. The industry didn't abandon these riders by mistake. It was built into the DNA of the chopper dream itself. The shoulder stories. Every rider who's ever owned an Orange County chopper has a story, and most of them end on the side of the road. You can hear the frustration in their voices when they talk about overheating engines, broken belts, and trailers that rescued legends more than once. One man from Arizona said his dream bike made it 30 miles before the oil pressure dropped to zero. He coasted to the shoulder, staring at the chrome that had once made him proud. Another rider from Ohio admitted he only rode his once. A 45-minute stretch that ended with smoke rolling from the pipes and a tow truck bill longer than the highway itself. Across forums and rallies, the pattern repeats. Showstopper bikes become trailer queens. Pride turns to pain, excitement to anxiety. Owners try fixes, but flaws remain. Beneath the chrome lies a haunting truth. They bought television's dream, not transportation, a legend built for spectacle, not endurance. And that realization leads to a harder truth. The very people who built the legend never meant it to survive the miles between towns. Built for cameras, not for the coast. When Discovery Channel brought Orange County choppers into America's living rooms, it wasn't selling motorcycles. It was selling characters, conflict, and spectacle. Paul Sr., Paul Jr., and Mikey became household names, not for touring the country, but for arguing under fluorescent lights while welding another chrome masterpiece for a celebrity client. Every episode had a deadline, a sponsor, and a moment of drama. The goal wasn't a road-tested machine. It was a television product ready for the reveal. The production crews weren't following engineers. They were following entertainers. The bikes were props for storytelling, not for the road. You can see it in the design choices. High pipes that cook your legs, handlebars so wide you can't split lanes, and tanks too small for any practical range. They looked incredible under studio lighting, but the physics never added up. Those builds were made to roll a few feet into a reveal shot, flash under stage lights, and get parked forever in a lobby or a museum. Corporate sponsors paid fortunes for exposure, not endurance. Bikes built for cameras, not the coast, gleamed under deadlines and branding. What began as a love letter to craftsmanship became a business of appearances. And when that mindset hit biker culture, something sacred quietly eroded. Because once motorcycles become props, the people who ride them stop being a brotherhood and start becoming an audience. If you want more stories that cut through the chrome and get to the truth about the bikes we ride, make sure you're subscribed. Real machines, real miles, and the lessons every rider deserves before their next road trip. From brotherhood to showroom. In the 70s and 80s, riding was about connection. You could pull into any small-town gas station and find someone willing to share a wrench, a story, or a cup of coffee. The bikes back then weren't perfect, but they were honest. A Harley, a Honda, a Yamaha, didn't matter. The goal was to ride, not to impress. Long miles forged friendships that lasted decades. Every scar on the tank had a story. Every noise had a name. But the television era changed the spirit. When the spotlight hit custom culture, it shifted the focus from miles to mirrors. Suddenly, the ride wasn't about where you'd been. It was about who was watching. Choppers became collectibles, and riders became spectators of their own image. A movement born from rebellion slowly turned into a fashion show. The word custom stopped meaning built by hand for the road and started meaning built for display. The garage spirit faded into showroom glamour. Gas and oil gave way to polish and perfume. Rallies turned to photo ops. For real riders, the new culture feels hollow. They remember when loyalty was measured in miles, not money, when the chopper craze sold image instead of brotherhood and road. And when that shift hit the market, the final bill came due. Because every trend, no matter how shiny, eventually loses its shine. The price of a poster bike. When the television cameras turned off, the resale market told the truth. Those $200,000 builds started dropping fast. Bikes once displayed in corporate lobbies or private garages began showing up at auctions for a fraction of their cost. Some couldn't fetch even 10% of their original price. Collectors who thought they were buying history realized they were holding liabilities. The market wasn't cruel, it was honest. The bikes had no practical demand, no service network, and no parts pipeline. Once the fame faded, their value went with it. Even the fans who had posters of those choppers on their walls stopped talking about them. The next generation didn't grow up with that kind of glamour. They grew up watching YouTube riders cross the country on machines that actually worked. Meanwhile, OCC's old builds became museum pieces or conversation starters, reminders of a brief moment when chrome outweighed craftsmanship. For many owners, the emotional cost outweighs the financial. They polish covered bikes, haunted by promises of freedom never delivered. The fall of Orange County choppers mirrors an era that mistook flash for legacy. Machines not destroyed by critics or time, but by the myth of fame that birthed them. And as the dust settles, the question every real rider asks is the same. When did we stop building machines for the road and start building them for applause? The builders who learned. After the chopper craze faded, the rest of the motorcycle world took a hard look at what went wrong. Harley, Indian, and Honda didn't just build motorcycles. They studied the fallout. They saw the exhaustion of riders who tried to tour on show bikes and swore never again. And so, quietly, an evolution began. The late 2000s saw a shift from vanity to versatility. Harley refined its touring frames, tightening rake angles and strengthening swing arms to handle long-haul stress. Indian re-entered the market with engineering built around comfort first, making bikes that could cross states without punishing the rider. Honda, always the silent craftsman, doubled down on the Goldwing, a machine that could glide from coast to coast without complaint. Manufacturers learned from the chopper era's mistakes. Respect is earned on highways, not in showrooms. Comfort and stability replaced shock value. Styling shifted from excess to balance. Harley, Indian, and Honda built machines for trust and distance, serviceable anywhere, ready for miles, not applause, restoring purpose where spectacle once ruled. But while the big names learned their lesson, the regulators were learning too, and they had their own reasons to put an end to the chopper era. The safety squeeze. By the late 2000s, insurance companies and the Department of Transportation had grown wary of custom motorcycles with wild geometries. They weren't designed to pass the same tests as production bikes, and that meant every accident raised a red flag. When an OCC-style bike with a 9-foot wheelbase and 40-degree rake failed a panic stop, it wasn't a mystery why. The balance point was too far forward, the brakes were too small, and the weight distribution made emergency handling nearly impossible. Insurance investigators began tracking patterns. Claims involving custom choppers carried higher injury rates and more severe damage. Many couldn't even be properly appraised because no two were built alike. That lack of standardization meant adjusters had no baseline for repair costs. Premiums climbed, and in some cases insurers refused coverage altogether. Riders who had already paid small fortunes suddenly found their bikes uninsurable, unserviceable, and nearly unrideable. The Department of Transportation tightened laws, demanding proof of compliance for lighting, emissions, and braking. Builders using mixed components couldn't meet standards. Even headlight height became a deal breaker. What ended Extreme Customs wasn't politics, but physics wrapped in liability. Their exaggerated forms finally pushed beyond what was safe at real highway speeds. And as the paperwork closed in, another divide opened up. Not between government and riders, but between the men who rode for miles and those who simply owned machines that never left the garage. Collectors versus riders. The end of the Orange County chopper boom didn't erase the bikes, it just changed who owned them. Across the country, they began to migrate from garages to galleries, from riders to collectors. Wealthy buyers who once idolized the television build started treating them like art pieces. Some were placed behind velvet ropes, others sat under spotlights in man caves, their engines never again fired. The machines that once claimed to represent rebellion became trophies of status. Meanwhile, real riders shifted their loyalty back to function. Touring bikes, adventure tourers, and even old-school cruisers started gaining respect again. The used market told the truth. A 15-year-old Goldwing with 70,000 miles still held value. A one-off chopper with 300 miles on the odometer couldn't get half its build cost. The divide became clear. Collectors owned history, riders owned reality. Across Europe and Asia, touring bikes rose in prestige for proving real freedom. Distance, reliability, endurance. American customs became nostalgic novelties, frozen in time. Somewhere between sketch and chrome, motorcycles lost purpose, turning from rebellion to vanity. The builders of freedom became the very symbols of excess they once defied. And when the applause faded, all that was left was the one judge that never changes its verdict: the open road itself, the road's verdict. The road doesn't care about paint jobs or television fame. It doesn't remember who sponsored your build or how many likes your photos get. It measures truth in miles and reveals it one vibration at a time. When you ride a machine built for distance, you feel the harmony between man, engine, and horizon. When you ride something built for spectacle, the illusion cracks with every passing mile. Every rider who has stood on a shoulder beside a smoking chopper knows that moment of reckoning. you start to realize the difference between what freedom looks like and what freedom feels like. The former is chrome and spotlight, the latter is endurance and trust. Freedom isn't in the attention a bike gets, it's in the distance it can go. The story of Orange County choppers is more than history. It's a warning etched in steel. Design without purpose breaks under its own weight. Older riders respect the craftsmanship yet know the truth. The soul of motorcycling was never in showrooms, but in the saddle, beneath sun and distance, earned honestly. The truth is simple. The world bought a dream wrapped in chrome, but the highway never lies. When the miles finally told their story, one lesson stood taller than any custom frame or camera shot. They sold a dream, and the highway sold the truth. If you've ever chased a dream bike that turned into a headache, you know exactly what I mean. Real riders earn their freedom mile by mile, not frame by fame. If you respect the truth behind the shine, hit that like button and subscribe, because here we don't sell hype.